Hi. So today we are meeting to talk a little bit about an interest of mine, something that I have been doing for about 16, 17 years now, which is of course what we usually call bird watching or birding. Um, I'll give you an overall view of what is it that I'm going to present over the next 20 minutes, uh, and then we'll go into it. A disclaimer is that this is a recorded assembly, so I have pre-recorded it, and I have also therefore invited a few students who are interested in bird watching and so on to join in. They will be able to ask some questions. I have requested them to ask questions wherever they would like to do so, and I try to give clarifications also to their questions. Of course, this means that all of you who are participating or watching this assembly will not be able to ask questions, but then you know where I am. You can always write to me or get in touch with me. The basic what I basically want to share is my interest in bird watching, what I have been doing, how I have been doing, where I have been doing. I'll give you some basic tips about how to do bird watching as I proceed through the talk. I'm also going to share uh, a few photographs that I have taken of birds over the years and talk a little bit about them. Um, I also want to talk about what equipment you use. As you can see, there is some equipment used, very basic things that you use in bird watching. And also, in addition to this, a new device that has come up, the mobile phone, and how the mobile phone is changing the way people do bird watching. I'll also be threading into the conversation the work of two giants of ornithology. Ornithology is the science of birds, studying birds, and we call what we do as amateur ornithology, because we are doing serious science, and I will tell you how we are doing serious science, how we can contribute towards the serious science. Two great people whose work we should be aware of, just as an interest in terms of science. Um, and also a little bit of my personal journey in this area. So to start with, um, why do people do bird watching? Okay, so in general, people would feel, people speak about bird watching in a kind of kidding tone. So they say bird watching is a passive activity. Many people feel that it's a very passive activity, but actually, bird watchers, those who I have met, are extremely energetic people, and they they travel the length and breadth of the country. Sometimes even overseas, they travel to all corners of the world. They climb the highest mountains, and sometimes often go into the ocean as well to watch pelagic birds. The hottest part of the world and the coldest part of the world cannot keep bird watchers away from what they want to do, which is to see birds in those habitats. So, what is our interest in bird watching? And this is, I know I don't want to give any answers to that. I don't pretend to know the answer to that. I am myself amazed sometimes at why is it that we get so interested in birding. And by extension, to also ask the same question of why is it that we are interested in nature at all. So to start with birding, basically what you need, I just talk about the basic equipment that I have over here. You need a pair of binoculars for obvious reasons. Birds are often very small, they could be pretty far away, and the easiest way to observe them without disturbing them. So that's another part of it, that birds in general are afraid of human beings. They are usually shy creatures. There are some birds who are pretty bold, but most birds, most wild birds are shy. So you need a pair of binoculars. You need to get used to using a binocular. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about that later. You need a notepad to note things down. So basically you make a list of birds as you can see over here. And you also make field notes as you go into the habitat where you are doing bird watching. You can make some field notes of species that you see that you cannot identify. And once you have made these field notes, you use what is known as a field guide. So this is an example of a field guide. This is the one that is the most used in India. It is popularly known as Grimet and Inskip for the name of the authors, as you can see. And it contains plates. These are called plates. That is pictures, paintings of birds which have been drawn from stuffed specimens, and their distribution, where do you find them, when do you find them, and something of their behavior, voice, calls, typical habitat, etc. etc. In India, we have a little over 1,300 birds, different species of birds, and there is a lot that can be done in terms of birding. A camera, of course, is optional. This is my old Sony camera. Most of the pictures that you will see today, perhaps all of the pictures that you will see today, have been taken with this camera. Unfortunately, the camera conked out about 4 or 5 years ago, so it's not a working camera right now. But I just put it there so you can see that that is one of the articles that you use. So now we will move into the presentation part of it, where I will share the photographs and some other information. So I'm moving into screen sharing now. Are you able to see my screen now? Can you see the painting that is there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And is my voice all right? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the first person who I want to introduce is an American. He lived in the 18th century. His name was John James Audubon. And when I first started ornithology, I somehow came across some paintings made by him. So John Audubon was an ornithologist, a naturalist, and also a painter. So Audubon's desire was to paint all of the birds of North America. So he lived in America, and he took up a momentous project to paint all the birds. You notice that he has a rifle in his hand. So in case you are wondering, yes, he used to shoot birds using pellets and collect specimens of birds, stuff them, and then use the mounted specimens to paint. Like I said, that's what they do in field guides too. The stuffed specimens, of course, are now kept in museums and so on. So the painters visit the museums, take out their stuffed specimens, and then make paintings based on them. But John James Audubon used to shoot, and he has also written extensively about his experience, including a biography, and he talks about shooting dozens of swallows in order to get the right specimen from which to make his painting. And of course, this may seem quite cruel to us, thinking in terms of conserving species. So there wasn't so much of an emphasis on conservation at that time of individual species. Conservation of nature, conservation of woodlands and so on was there, but people didn't think so much in terms of conservation of species, which of course has changed today. So John James Audubon's painting of American birds fascinated me. Very beautifully done work. These are called summer birds. These are American birds, of course, so you won't see them in India. But one of the things that fascinated me about John James Audubon's work was the fact that he also painted the birds along with their natural habitat. So he would show something of the natural habitat of the bird, what it eats, where it perches, its prey, its predator sometimes. And also the birds were not done exactly as they appear when they are stuffed, but he would stylize them a little bit. So there was some style that went into this painting too. And this has influenced my photography quite a lot because I really look for images in which I can show something more than what just the form of the bird is like. So it tells you something about the bird itself in terms of its natural habitat. Here is another painting by John James Audubon. I suggest you look a little closely. There is something about this that is fascinating. So these are mockingbirds. In class 8, people study to kill a mockingbird. This is the actual American mockingbird. What do you notice about this painting?
I see a snake there.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you know what type of snake it is? Try to follow the snake from its head to tail. Then some of you might recognize what the snake is.
Snake? Rattlesnake?
Exactly. It's a rattlesnake because you can see the rattle at the tail end, right? So there is a rattle over there in the back end of the snake. And the snake is obviously trying to poach the eggs of the bird, because you can also see there is a nest there and there are some eggs also that are visible. Here is a closer view of the same thing, sort of detail from the same picture. And you can see the rattlesnake. The birds, of course, the parents are trying to protect the eggs. They try a lot. I have seen 1 or 2 instances when this happens. Again, with snakes and birds, birds try to protect their hatchlings, their nest, their eggs, at risk of their own lives. But so you see, there is something of a drama over here. There is something of an unfolding tragedy that comes out in these paintings, and this was one of those kinds of things that about Audubon's paintings that used to fascinate me. So I used to look at a lot of his paintings initially, and perhaps as a result of that, I don't remember right now, it was a good 16, 17 years ago, so I'm not sure whether I got fascinated with bird watching and then started looking at the paintings, or the paintings and then the bird watching. Not very clear, but whatever it is, I continue to be fascinated with both. I did a lot of my bird watching with my students. The initial days, I was myself just beginning to do bird watching, and I didn't know much about it. And I was lucky in one sense that almost all of my adult working life, I have lived in the Western Ghats. So I lived in the southern Western Ghats in an area called the Palni Hills in Tamil Nadu for 9 years. Few months in between after that, in 2009, 2010, I lived in Chennai. And then I came to Sahyadri School, and I have been here for 10 years now. So my constant companions in bird watching were students and sometimes fellow teachers as well. And they are a great source of energy and inspiration. There are so many instances when in the middle of the class, I would notice a bird outside, and then the whole class would start, everybody would be outside trying to see the bird. In this school, this was called Sholay School, where I used to work. We used to have classes in the outdoor, overlooking the valley, and there was so much vegetation around over there that there would be a constant parade of birds all the time. So I would sit in my class with a group of students, with my binoculars, with my notepad, and with my camera, And as I am taking classes, if we happen to see some bird, all of us will look towards the bird, note the whole thing down, and then get back to our classes. So this is how I started doing bird watching, and I've had opportunity to sort of share my interest in bird watching with many students over the years. This is a common raptor that we see all over India. In fact, does anybody know what this raptor is? Shiv should know.
Peregrine falcon.
No. Okay, I'll tell you. So this is a honey buzzard. Okay, and there is one thing about the honey buzzard that you can easily use to identify it. There's something peculiar about the bird. Can you tell me what it is?
The head.
Yeah, exactly. The head of the.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'll show you some other raptor pictures later on. Raptors are basically birds of prey, and you see that their neck, shoulder, and head will be kind of triangular. But the honey buzzard is one raptor whose head is not triangular in the same way as for most birds of prey. So it kind of sticks out a little bit. Shantaram sir, some of you would have met him. He's the resident ornithologist of Rishi Valley and kind of a mentor for me. He told me that the way to identify a honey buzzard is to look at the neck. If it looks like a pigeon's or a dove's, then you know it's an honey buzzard. Okay, so that is one way to identify it. There will be another honey buzzard photograph coming a little later, and I expect you people to remember this and answer. But then there are other raptor pictures also, you could get confused. Moving on. You recognize this bird. This is from last monsoon, and the situation is almost exactly the same right now. This is a red-rumped swallow, and they are busy building their nest. So they look for these kinds of pools of water to collect mud from, and they use that mud to build their nest. So this one was just outside the vermicelli, and it collected some mud and flew away. I think if you look a little closely, you can also see the mud ball in its mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any questions?
No.
Okay.
White cheek.
So this is a white-cheeked barbet, and rarely seen in Sahyadri. It is present now a few weeks, I think a week ago, Anjali Akka saw the white-cheeked barbet just outside her balcony. But this is of course from Sholay School. It makes a very peculiar call, but I selected this photo even though it's not a great photograph because of this, because I also caught it eating this fruit of the solanum tree. So this is a solanum tree. Sometimes you can find it wild around Sahyadri also. There are plenty of it over there. We call it sundakai in Tamil. And it's eating the solanum fruit. And a little later, it is also eating the lantana berry. It was the same sequence of shots. So it shows, something of what its food habitat is like. Some egrets, its typical habitat. This was at a relative's farmhouse. Along with birding, of course, you also get to see lots of other things, mostly insects, sometimes reptiles, sometimes mammals. But bird watching is not a sort of isolated activity. You get to know so much about nature by just doing that activity, including, of course, knowing about plants. So this one is called as a line, silver line. It's a very common butterfly found in India. A white eye. This is again in Western Ghats, but this is in Ooty. a famous hill station in Tamil Nadu. Okay, so this is an orange and black flycatcher, or is it a black and orange flycatcher? I don't remember. It's an endemic species found only in the Western Ghats. This was taken in Kodaikanal. And by endemic, I mean it's a species that is not found in any other habitat in the world. So this flycatcher is specific to the Western Ghats. Also, interestingly, its ornithology, that is its zoological name, used to be, I do not know what it is now, Musica kappa rufa nigris. So Musica kappa gives the family name. Rufa nigris is two colors that come quite often on birds. Rufa is this orange brown color that you see on the back and the tail of the bird, and nigris is of course black. So Musica kappa rufa nigris. Sometimes, ever so often, the zoological name gives you something of what the bird looks like. This is another favorite of mine, Greyhead and Canary. It's also of the passerine family, perching birds family. And this was just outside my house in Cholet School. It was sitting on a coffee branch, and there was a period of time when this bird would always be sitting there. The bathroom toilet was not attached to the house, it was outside the house. So when I went from the house from my cottage into the bathroom area, the bird would almost always be sitting there. So one day I clicked some pictures. Interesting bird. This is another favorite of mine. Very recently in the winter, last winter, it was found in Sahyadri. I mean, it was seen in Sahyadri school as well. So it's a migrant bird. It usually resides in the Himalayas, and before winter, it starts coming down towards peninsular India, and you can see it in various places across India during that time. This photograph was taken in Cholet School in the Palni Hills, Tamil Nadu. But as I said, this winter, the winter of 2019-20, we also saw it in school, almost always perched on a tree just opposite to Akshata Akka's house on the Astachal Hill, old Astachal. I don't know if anybody got to see it. Another beautiful bird.
That was Verditor flycatcher, right?
The previous one, I'm sorry, did I not mention the name? Yes, it's called a Verditor flycatcher. I have also seen this bird in the Himalayas. When I went for treks in the Himalayas, that time I have seen it there also. So I have seen it in Tamil Nadu, I have seen it in Maharashtra, and I have also seen it in Uttarakhand, if I'm not mistaken. Used to be called the black cap flycatcher shrike. I believe now it is called the barwing flycatcher shrike. But another beautiful flycatcher. Flycatchers are some of my favorite birds. This is a bird again that you can see also in Sahyadri. It's the scimitar babbler. Very interesting bird, often seen around the monsoon time period. Any recall of which one this is? Does anybody know what this is? Wait, I'll have to. So this is a little ringed plover. The photograph has been taken in Melghat, but this bird can also be found in the Bhima, along the banks of the Bhima river when you go downhill from school. This is a Rufus tailed lark. Also seen in Sayadri. I've been seeing it in the winter over here. A species that is found commonly all over peninsular India. A yellow-browed bulbul. Keep a close eye on the image when I change it and tell me what you see. Okay. So this is a white-cheeked barbet. This is a yellow-browed bulbul. Do you notice anything odd about this image?
The background is the same.
The background is exactly the same.
Branch the same, yeah.
The branch is exactly the same, right? So you can see that this bird was sitting there. The yellow-browed bulbul was sitting there, and then the white-cheeked barbet came, and the yellow-browed bulbul flew away. So which is the bully and which is the bullied? So birds do bully each other quite a lot. If you observe them closely, you will find that many birds are big bullies. The crows being some of the worst bullies. The crows, the drongos, and the babblers are very, very bad bullies. This is again from Melghat Tiger Reserve. A couple of excursions that I went with class 7 and class 8, or just class 7 students. This is one of the first raptors that I came to know. So huge guy, 50 centimeters on average, tail to head. That's half a meter, and intense bird. When you look at it, it has an intense sort of appearance. It's the what? Again, I've forgotten the name momentarily. So that's the crested serpent eagle, just taking off its flight. A favorite, yeah, a favorite of all people on campus. Whether you know birding or not, if you see a paradise flycatcher, everybody is interested. So this was taken in Sholay School on the estate of the Maharaja. We had gone for a trek over there, and I saw this bird over there. I have seen this in different places, including Rishi Valley. So this is a juvenile of a mountain hawk eagle, and somehow you can see, because of the appearance, the dumpy appearance and the lightness of the plumage, you can make out that it is a juvenile bird. And again, Sholay School. This surely some of you should be able to recognize.
Robin.
Magpie
Robin.
Yeah.
Magpie robin, yeah. Brilliant songster,
Oh,
beautiful singer, many different sort of notes that it can sing. It can be pretty confusing if you hear it in song. And commonly found all over India, also seen in Sayadri School. Right now there is one that is almost always present outside the Dhobi Ghat. I don't know what it's doing over there, but it's always there. You know, notice something strange about this particular specimen? Look at it.
One.
Yeah?
Sitting on one leg.
Yeah. It's either standing just on one leg or it has only one leg. Sometimes you can find oddities like that. There are some birds that I have seen with just one leg.
then where is its second leg?
Sorry?
If it has a second leg, where is it?
Yeah, exactly. If it has another leg, what is it doing with that? That's the question. So I think it is a one-legged bird, but I'm not sure. It was too long ago. I don't remember very well.
So if it is one leg, then it means that it must have injured. It must have got an injury, and then the.
Yes, correct. Exactly. It might have got injured, and perhaps it recovered from the injury, which must be fairly rare in the wild. And then it learned how to adapt by just keeping one leg. For after all, mostly they can fly from one place to another. They need the leg only to perch. So it can survive that way. I have seen other birds, certainly with only one leg, managing. This is a hawk cuckoo, also known as the brain fever bird. Again, there is a considerably.
The camouflage.
Sorry?
Camouflage.
Yeah, many birds have this kind of a camouflage on their plumage. If you saw it against a forest background, it is quite difficult to identify that the bird is there. In fact, in Sahyadri school, it is very hard to locate the hawk cuckoo because of the kind of vegetation that we have. I was lucky in this one because it was sitting right next to an open field on a branch right beside the road. So I got some nice pictures of the hawk cuckoo. Otherwise, it's fairly rare to see the hawk cuckoo directly. It will be perched high up on a tree somewhere. You can hear it very easily, but you can't see it easily, especially in Sahyadri school. So a little bit about what you can do in terms of bird watching now. So many people are locked up in their homes. Months have gone by. So and especially you people who have spent a few years in Sahyadri school and are used to the outdoor spaces and so on. It must be quite difficult being at home and not being in contact with nature. I do hope you don't feel it to a great extent, but it's bound to be there. So one of the things that I've been hearing now is that people have taken up something called balcony bird watching. So even if you are in urban areas, and probably most of you are, it is possible to do bird watching. I have done it myself in places like Bangalore, Chennai, in Madurai, different cities that I have visited, Kolkata also. If you are in a place where there is some vegetation, a few trees, a park, a garden, maybe a water area, a water body area, a beach, you can do bird watching in these places, and if you look for them long enough, you will definitely find birds are present, because there literally is no habitat on earth where birds will not colonize. Okay, so it is possible for you to continue doing your bird watching. It's just that you have to do it from the confines of your apartment or something. You can go to your terrace, you can stand at your window, you can sit in your balcony, and you can do bird watching, and you will be surprised at how many species you will be able to see. Okay, particularly in the evenings and the mornings. If you look at the skies, if you happen to be in a coastal area, you can look at the skies. You probably see some coastal birds flying past. It is completely possible. So do give it a shot and tell me what happens. So these are a couple of Rufus babblers, again in Sholay School. This is a Brahmini kite, and Shiv and others will remember. I don't remember if Shiv was there, but
I wasn't there.
you were in there. When we had gone down to the river last term, oh yes, Nandan was there. Nandan, do you remember?
Yes, we were with Shantaram sir, if I'm not mistaken.
Was Shantaram sir there? Okay, I don't remember that, but no, at that time I don't think Shantaram sir was there. This fellow Namit was there, I think.
Yeah, Namit was there.
Ratul was also.
So very rare to see it in Sahyadri school, Brahmini kite, but otherwise found pretty commonly everywhere in India, especially where there are water bodies. Beautiful looking kite, beautiful raptor. And this photograph was taken in a wetland, a marsh area called Pichavaram in coastal Tamil Nadu, coastal central Tamil Nadu, not central Tamil Nadu, coastal northern Tamil Nadu. This is a hill myna, fascinating species. What you are seeing on top of its head is the wattle. It's what is called as a wattle. It's a kind of growth. You also see it in hens and roosters. It's the same thing, except it comes in a slightly different form. A brilliant mimic, this bird. Actually, they are better than parakeets or parrots in mimicking. and of course they are poached for that reason. But this was in Shole school. It is sitting on a castor tree, from where we get the castor oil. An outlet. This is from the Theosophical Society in Chennai, in Adyar. So it nests
Posing.
squirrels. Yeah, anything to say?
It's posing because it's looking straight at you.
Yeah, exactly. So owls have these things. There is huge saucer-like eyes, and therefore they are associated with being wise birds. Wise.
Yeah.
You see them often in fairy tales being depicted as the wise ones. I just find them terribly funny. They are nocturnal, obviously, so they have large eyes so that they can see at night. But also, something remarkable about them is their feathers. They can fly almost noiselessly. This has happened to me. I have seen an owl fly by and heard nothing. If you hear a crow flying by, it makes such a loud noise. Crows make, if they are flying by at about eye level, then you hear this kind of sound. But with owls, you will hear nothing. This is although it's not a great photograph, this is taken in Chennai in the school campus. It's an orange-headed thrush. Recently, I saw the orange-headed thrush on campus. So over the last couple of months, June, July, part of August also, I have been seeing this thrush on campus. It has not been sighted before over here by anybody. So we're quite excited for having seen this bird over here. Yeah, a jewel beetle. This is, of course, many of you will know, scaly-bellied or scaly-breasted munia. This particular photo, I wanted to show you the size of its beak in comparison to its. Look at that. So it has a finch-like beak used for eating nuts and so on, seeds and nuts. And just see the sheer size of that beak. Although it's not exactly in focus, I selected this photo so you can see the beak. Same bird, side pose. And another fascinating thing that these birds do is they collect these leaves. And you know why they do that?
Nesting, maybe?
Yeah.
Exactly. So they are making nests with these leaves. They are doing it now as we speak, just outside this building. And they collect these leaves, elephant grass leaves, and then they make a ball-like nest out of this. And you can see them quite often during the monsoon doing this. Their beaks are so strong and sharp that they just snip like a pair of scissors, they just snip the leaf stalk, the grasses stalk, and then carry them away. A pied cuckoo, harbinger of monsoon rains. We have seen it now on campus. This, I think, was in a place called Nelakote, just at the base of the Kodaikanal Hills, Palni Hills. Chloropsis, that used to be the old name for this bird. I thought it was quite a romantic name. Golden-fronted Chloropsis, but they have now changed the name to leaf bird. So it's called a golden-fronted leaf bird. This also used to be one of my favorite birds. Velvet-fronted nuthatch. This is from Shole School. It kind of it does something fascinating. It can go up the side of a tree and it can also come down the side of a tree. And it sometimes even hangs upside down and walks. Quite amazing. And the reason is because, can you see the back claw? Very long back claw is there. And that long back claw is what helps it to do this. An Indian silver bill. This is taken on the way to Gundalwadi village. This one I am pretty proud of, although it's not a great photograph. This is a photograph taken in winter 2011, November 2011. This is a rare species of owl that hasn't been seen in this area, that had not been seen in this area for over 15 years at that point of time, according to some journals. Pallid scops owl. And I have not seen it since then also. This was taken pretty close to the checkpost, the first checkpost. The purple sunbird, and a purple sunbird in eclipse plumage. That is, during the non-breeding season, the purple sunbird's plumage changes. That is, the feather, color of the feather and the appearance of the feather changes. So it kind of gets this dirty look, and then the feather turns into that kind of resplendent purple blue that it carries during the breeding season. This was again on campus. You can identify the plant. We use it for our hedges quite a lot. Another picture of the paradise flycatcher. But here you can see the paradise flycatcher's plumage again turning from that rusty brown to white. So adult males have the long tail and the full white body plumage. The tail doesn't grow for the females. Okay, which one is this now? And how can you say?
Oriental honey buzzard.
Oriental animals.
So this is the honey buzzard. Again, the reason you can make out is the neck. It sticks out like a dove's or a pigeon's.
Sir,
Yeah,
can you go back at the photo of honey buzzard?
yeah.
So you can also notice like there are two feathers kind of you can see on its tail.
The
So,
tail,
like,
yeah. The tail
Yeah.
band is also something that can help you to identify. Yes. So there is it ends with a black band, and then there is a white patch, and then again a black band. You would have noticed the same thing in the previous picture also.
yeah.
Okay, purple rump sunbird makes this kind of dirty appearing nest. Must be very cozy inside. Again, you can find 2 or 3 nests now on campus. It's nesting season now over here. This is in Bhima Shankar. We had gone for a trek in Bhima Shankar. We do go a lot to Bhima Shankar for the treks. It's a black bulbul. This is a lark. This was seen near Nani Ghat. We had gone for rock climbing to Nani Ghat. And I saw this lark sitting on that euphorbia, that cactus-like plant. Actually, it's not cactus, it's euphorbia. So this is one thing. I recently saw the lark on the way to Wada also. The same lark. Common kingfisher. This is in Sholay School. A purple rump sunbird. And again, not a great picture. Very few examples of nocturnal birds that I have seen. This is probably a savanna nightjar. I'm not sure, you can't make out. Nightjars are very hard to find, to distinguish, particularly because you usually see them at night. But this could also be the Indian nightjar. Only the call will help you to definitely identify. So I'll tell you a little bit about calls also later. This is in Kutch. These are Dalmatian pelicans. we go for the class 11 excursion to Kutch. So at that time I had taken these pictures. A closer look at the pelicans. Huge birds, and you look at them, you wonder how they can fly, but they fly so gracefully. Again in Kutch, we had gone for a walk on sort of a coastal mud flat. The ground was slippery and mucky, and we walked for like about a kilometer to reach near the ocean. And then I saw this reef egret, western reef egret, beautiful bird. In I think this is in breeding plumage again. And this was the mud flat that we walked in. So it was near a town called Bhadreshwar, going into the Arabian Sea. And you see something strange over here. You know, you see how close the boat has come to the coast. These two people, they are students, walking towards the edge, and the boat has come almost as close as where they are. Very interesting. One of the most interesting sort of habitats that I have visited for bird watching. Some starlings. So there's like, you know, no place where you can't observe birds. One of the things that I do is when I go on long train journeys, I look for birds through the windows or the doors. And you'll be surprised how many birds you will see actually just making a journey through, you know, the Indian landscape. Plenty of them. You just need a binocular and a field guide, and you will be able to identify tons of them. And so we come to the Himalayas. So I think what I'll do is we'll take a pause here. So somewhere around 2009-10, when I shifted from staying in the southern Western Ghats to Sahyadri school in the actual Sahyadris, I kind of lost interest in bird watching, and I stopped doing bird watching. I also kind of stopped having an interest in photography, so that also sort of contributed to a lull. And the next 3 or 4 years, I would do bird watching sporadically here and there, only when I travel. One trip I remember was going to Valley School. Another trip was going to Rishi Valley. Both these places I did some bird watching and photography. But I kind of dropped the idea of bird watching at around that time. And you know, that is when I got an opportunity to travel to the Himalayas. So the first trip that I took to the Himalayas, the summer trek, was to Sikkim, and there couldn't have been a better place to go for bird watching. Sikkim rekindled my interest in bird watching, and this last section of birds that I'm going to show are all birds that I saw. In Sikkim, when I went, I didn't have a camera. I didn't take a camera because I wasn't interested in photography. So I didn't take any photographs, but I made a bird list. And that kind of interested me. The following year, we went to Uttarakhand, and then later to Himachal. And since then, whenever I have been to the Himalayan trek, I have taken photographs and I have maintained lists. Every time I go to the Himalayas, I add 20 to 30 birds to my life list. So it's a fantastic area for bird watching. You must visit the Himalayas for birding. So this is a magpie, yellow-billed blue magpie, very commonly seen over there. I'll just kind of quickly go through this section because there's a lot more that I need to talk about. This is a black-throated tit. Again, you can see the effect of Audubon's paintings on me. I like this drama. So it's got a caterpillar and it's bashing the caterpillar against the branch to kill it, and then of course it will eat it. This is an unidentified woodpecker. I mean, unidentified in the sense right now I don't think I can find out what woodpecker it is, but you can see the woodpecker there, and you can see the tree covered with ferns and moss. Beautiful, beautiful sights all over the Himalayas. This is one of the most common birds that you can see in the Himalayas. It's called a red start, and I took the picture hiding behind a boulder, and it usually sits near streams and water bodies. So this one was sitting near a stream, and it treated me to this sight by fanning out its tail. And that brings us to one of the craziest birds that I have seen. I would call this the craziest bird that I have seen. This is a bird called the brown dipper, sort of a dumpy, silly-looking bird. But what this bird does is quite remarkable. The water that you see behind that looks so nice and enticing now is actually melt water. It's frozen. It's water that has just come out of frozen mountain tops. And it's horribly, horribly cold. And this bird dives into this water to look for tiny insects to eat. So it flies upstream, it dives into the water, swims downstream, and then climbs back onto a rock and then repeats the process again. Quite a mental bird, brown dipper. White-collared blackbird. Again, the name fits the description. White-collared blackbird. This, I think, is an Himalayan woodpecker. Woodpeckers are very common in the Himalayas. And one strange thing about woodpeckers in the Himalayas is you see them foraging on the ground. That's something that is unusual for woodpeckers. In peninsular India, wherever I have seen woodpeckers, they have been on trees. They are woodpeckers, they peck on the branches. But in the Himalayas, I've seen them on the forest floor. This is a griffon vulture or a Himalayan vulture. And something again that you see very commonly along with the bearded vulture. Huge, huge birds, but very graceful in flight. This is an Rufus accentor, quite high altitudes. You will see them close to about 4,000 meters, 4,000 feet altitude. Interesting birds. And the Rufus accentor I have taken 3 pictures of the Rufus accentor to show to you people. Because in a way it shows the morphology of the bird, the way the different features of the birds come together. So in order to identify birds in the field, you have to note down some characteristics pretty quickly. Okay, so you look through the binocular and you can make either a mental note, you can speak into your mobile phone's voice recorder, and traditionally what we do is we make field notes, we write it down. So you have to remember certain things, like for example, for this bird, to identify it, you need to note down head, start with the head, okay? You can start with the general appearance, of course, that is already well known. What is the size of the bird, where did you see it, what is the time, what was it sitting on, any other distinguishing features. But for birds that are difficult to identify, you also note down what is the crown like. Okay, so this part, the top of its head is what is known as the crown. So you say dark black crown. The next thing to the crown is the brow, or what is known as the supercilium. Okay, so white supercilium starting from the beak and then becoming rufous later. Okay, then the eyes. Sometimes birds have distinct irises. Okay, so that color you can note down. Is it yellow? Is it black? Is it orange? So you can note that down. And then the area below the supercilium on the rest of it is called as the lores. So the lores are black, extending up to the neck. Okay, and then this is another stripe that comes below the lores. It has a specific name, I forget what it is now. You can note that also down. And then the neck. Neck, you can say it is clear or slightly mottled below the beak, or slightly blotched below the beak. Then comes the breast, color of the breast, orange. Belly is streaked with black, gray in color. And then the legs, flesh colored, light colored legs or flesh colored legs, longish tail. And then the back. So you can see that there is a black streaks on dark brown background as the back. Okay, and over here you can also see the beak, black colored beak. What else can you notice? Okay, and then the next one, yes, here you can see the back, the streaking on the back, how it is. So if you note down these kinds of details, then it becomes easy for you to narrow down the species list in your bird list. And believe me, you can spend hours doing this kind of narrowing down. And you may be often unsuccessful. You can go from the beginning to the end of the bird book and not identify species. But it has often happened to me that a few days later, a few hours later, sometimes years later, I learned that I have picked up sufficient skill and familiarity to identify the bird that I could not identify many, many years ago or a few days ago. So you need to build certain skills as a bird watcher to be able to identify species successfully on the field. So with that, I kind of come to the conclusion of this section of the talk. Just a photograph of a view from Python Hill looking onto Navadvip Island. And I want to talk about an entirely different aspect of this. So in the past, when we used to do bird watching, we used to keep bird lists. If you got interested in it, then you try to keep a life list, how many species of birds you have seen so far from India, and you share it with some of your other friends who are also bird watchers. So it used to be a kind of a private affair unless you became part of some bird watching club or something like that, and then you share it with some of the other members of the club. It was rare for amateur bird watchers to contribute information in terms of ornithology, in terms of real ornithology. There were forums that were available, but the entry restrictions into those forums were pretty strict. So if I claimed that I saw, like for example in 2011, I saw the Otis brucei, that is the pallid scops owl, and I reported this to Shantaram sir. Luckily I had photographs, so he confirmed that it was an pallid scops owl, and he asked me to write to BLHS about it. Or to Ornis, New Ornis Foundation, a couple of organizations that he mentioned who keep track of citizen bird watchers. But I wrote to these organizations and I got nothing in reply. So it probably got lost in the rain of emails that they get. They probably did not know who I was, so they did not acknowledge that I might have seen something important in terms of an observation. And frankly, it was quite a disappointing matter for me not to be able to contribute towards bird watching in a formal manner. So it used to be kind of like a private affair. But a few years later, something quite revolutionary happened, and the next part of my talk is about this development, which is the development of Ebirds. Okay, so Cornell University, I just want to confirm, are you able to see my browser page now?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah, okay. So Cornell University, along with Macaulay Library, started a project which was about citizen science. So the paucity of information about birds around the world, lack of information, was hampering research into bird life. And therefore, these researchers decided to include citizens, common citizens, ordinary bird watchers, amateur ornithologists also into their fold, so that they can increase the number of people who are out there making observations by a huge factor. And they started this project under the Cornell University called Ebird. Okay, and what started off as one project located for bird watchers in North America and Europe has now grown and spilled into something that can be done across the world. So Ebirds India came along pretty soon. And now what you can do is, like for example, I will show you, this is the Ebird India website, and you can search for Pune region, where I am. Okay? So, okay, it's going in. So what happens is in Ebirds is that ordinary bird watchers do bird watching, and then they upload their checklists into the Ebird site. And these checklists are sometimes verified if you have claimed something out of the ordinary. Then somebody writes to you and asks, can you confirm this? Can you give some more additional information about this? Do you have photographs? Do you have calls? Can you write more about it? And then when you confirm that, then they compare it with their information that they have, and then they include it into it. Otherwise, if I am just reporting crows, parakeets, the order, what is that, magpie, robin, and so on, then they just include that into the general list. So this is for Pune region, and what you see over here is that this is the latest additions made by different people. Okay, so there are different people who are registered onto this site, Ebirds India. It is free of cost. Anybody can register with an email ID, and you can start contributing your information. Okay, and as you can see over here in Pune region, 423 species have been reported so far, and there are more than 20,000 checklists that have been submitted. Not only this, if you happen to be living in a place where there are a lot of birds, as I do, then what you can do is you can mark this location as what is called as a hotspot. So a hotspot is a place where there are considerable number of species, enough for it to be marked as an important birding area. And lo and behold, Sahyadri School KFI Pune is in the 20th spot in entire Pune district in terms of the number of bird species that are identified, that have been identified so far. So 163 species have been identified. We are working on it. I'm sure we can get as far as 200, but for that, I need you people back on campus doing bird watching every day. And of course, there are places like Big One, Kumbulgaon Bird Sanctuary, that is in a little bit south of here, South Maharashtra, and it's a water body area, and you have some 297 species that can be seen over there. I'm waiting to go to that place. So 20th most abundant area in Maharashtra in terms of bird life, that is Sahyadri School KFI Pune. And this happens because of information that has been fed by people from the school. So if I go into that hotspot, the Sahyadri School Pune hotspot in Ebirds, there are 163 species. Last seen, first seen, high counts, bar charts, printable checklists, so there are several tabs that can be explored. And as you can see, well, most of the bird observations have been made by either Reena or me currently. Prabhat sir has contributed before, Shantaram sir has contributed a few checklists, and there are some other few people who have visited campus who have also contributed this bird list. Now, what happens when you contribute your bird lists is that you get a field checklist that automatically comes like this. So this lists all the 163 species that are seen in Sahyadri School. And there is also an illustrated checklist. So I'll just show you this one also. And the illustrated checklist shows the species, when you can find it on campus. So you can obviously see that the ruddy-shelled duck, which is a kind of duck, is seen in winter. So it starts from November onwards, and you can see them all the way till January, and then a few observations at the beginning of summer. So like that, there is information for all the species. Wherever photographs are available, photographs have been put up. Wherever audio recordings have been done, there the audio recordings have also been entered. So you can see over here the laughing dove found throughout the year, except for one small section over here. I'm trying to fill this gap up also. I'm sure it's a species that can be seen round the year in India. So, sorry, in Sayadri school. So this is for the Savannah nightjar, one of the few in which there is a call also associated. So I'll just play this call. So this was a call that I had made just outside Jaintia in 2011 when I first saw the Savannah nightjar over there, and therefore it's a confirmation. I have a picture, a photograph of the bird, and I also have the call. So it can be confirmed that I have seen the Savannah nightjar on campus. So that brings me close to the conclusion of this talk. Please register yourself at Ebirds. There is an app also that is available for Ebirds. So I'll talk a little bit about the one another addition to the birding paraphernalia, which is the mobile phone. So you have the eBird app. Okay, you can't see the screen very well, but basically you have the app, you open the app, and you can start a checklist. You can take it along with you into the field. As you are noticing the species, you can keep adding the species, the number of birds that you have seen, etc., into it. And at the end of it, at the press of a button, you just click submit, and the data goes into the eBirds database. One more addition that they have done to this is they are trying to get rid of our beloved field guides. They have created another site called the Merlin, another app called the Merlin, and the Merlin contains a photographic checklist of all the birds that can be found in your region. So, say for example, if I want to look for a bird, all I need to do is type the name of the bird, and it pulls up a list of possible birds, and if you click on the bird's image, you go into its site. I don't know if you can see it clearly over here, but the description is there. There are 3 tabs: sound, map, and info. And there are there are multiple photographs, and the call also comes. So this is very useful. So this is very useful in the field. You don't have to carry this bulky book around with you, and you don't have to carry this bulky book with you. Just a small mobile phone would do. So you add this also to the paraphernalia of bird watching. Okay, so now going back to the concluding session. The person who introduced bird watching to me, I just like to say some thanks to them. The man sitting behind the wheel of this vehicle, he's my namesake. His name is also Arun. His name is Arun Venkatraman. He worked in the Krishnamurti school in Chennai for many years, I think 15 years or something like that, as an environment science teacher. He's the one who first introduced bird watching to me. Currently, he resides in a place called Tiruvannamalai in Tamil Nadu, and he runs a school over there, a very interesting school called Marudam Farm School. You can look it up and you can visit also. Very interesting person, a very inspiring environmentalist. The other person is a person who I worked with in Sholay School. He worked briefly in Sayadri School also, but I doubt if any of you know him. His name is Sriram. This was a car that was restored by the principal and the owner of the school that I worked in, a Britisher called Brian Jenkins. And this was his grandmother's car. So she gave it to him when she passed away. And he rebuilt the vehicle. He brought it from England to India and he rebuilt the vehicle with the help of students. The second personality that I wanted to talk about is the author of this book. Many of you will know him. His name is Salim Ali. He's India's chief ornithologist. He's no more, of course. He passed away in 1987. But a remarkable man. He traveled the length and breadth of this country to collect information, data, and to catalog the birds. He was not an artist himself, but he created the first, probably one of the first color plates of birds and published it in a book form. So the result of his decades-long work was this book, the Handbook of Birds of India and Pakistan. Amazing collection, 10 volumes. It's called the Handbook, but actually when all the 10 volumes are put together, it becomes a huge book. I had compiled the 10 volumes in the previous school's library, and I used to refer to it quite a lot. Brilliant writing, amazing descriptions. And descriptions reminds me, the bird that is there on this particular volume, I selected this particular volume, volume 10, flower peckers to buntings, because of the bird that is there on the cover. This bird, I did not know this until one fine day in Sholay school, when I was walking by with a binocular luckily in hand. I saw this bird sitting on a banana flower and sucking nectar from the banana flower bunch and making this awful continuous call. Chack, 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 chack. It keeps going like that. Okay. And I tried to note down as much detail as possible. And what is the outstanding feature of this bird, as you can see? Anything that stands out?
The beak.
Yeah. What about the beak? Sorry?
It's long and curved.
Yeah, it's long and it's curved, right? So I was quite struck by the bird when I saw it, and especially when you look through a binocular, it appears quite fantastical. So the plumage, the crown part of it, the feathers on it, the way it was sitting on the banana flower, I was fascinated by it. So I immediately ran to the library. I pulled out the book and I, spent probably the next half an hour, 45 minutes looking for this bird. And when I came to the particular entry that Salim Ali and Dylan Reddy had made about this bird, first of all, I looked at the plates and I identified the bird, then I went to the description. The description was almost exactly what I had seen. The description was, you will find this bird sitting in banana plantations, probably perched on the flower and sucking nectar. The bird is called the little spider hunter. So it's called the spider hunter. You don't see it in Sahyadri school, but it's very commonly found in Kodaikanal, in Sholay school where I come from. And a few years later, students of mine called me to the laboratory and they said that there is a bird that is stuck in the laboratory and it's not able to fly out. Can you come and rescue the bird? I had become a bit of a bird rescuer. I have done a few rescues. I can talk about it at another time. So I went to the laboratory and there it was, the little spider hunter. So I caught the bird and held it in my hand, took this photograph. The bird was a little short because it had been trapped and caught. So it did not fly when I opened my hand. And I just managed to take a photograph and immediately after that it flew. So that's the kind of thing that happens when you start looking at birds. So it's a wrap as the sun sets on Shringeshwar in the evening with the windmills in the foreground. we come back to the question of why do people bird watch? What is it about nature that attracts us? And I think the fact that nature is something that lies beyond our imagination, right? Something that we cannot possibly comprehend in its entirety. Something from which there are always surprises. I think that is what attracts us to nature. There is a certain beauty, there is a certain order to nature, and that beauty and order is beyond our judgments. Okay? Our judgments of what is nice, what is beautiful, what is good, what is bad, what is cruel, what is ugly, it does not matter to nature. Nature exists as it is for no purpose other than to exist for itself. I end with this picture of Salim Ali. And this quote that I just came across today, and I'm trusting that this is a genuine quote. And I suppose I have done my bit. It's now up to you younger people.